with sustainability. It used to be a very political issue, and I think now it's crossed into a much more moral issue.
I totally agree.
People really are starting to see this from an issue of morality. There was a book written about 3 or 4 years ago by a guy named E.O. Wilson, who's a very well-known philosopher. And the book is called The Creation, and it talks about that. It talks about how this has really become a moral issue. We have to just all sort of get on the same page and understand this is about, not just about us, it's about our children and our children's children.
Sure. You know, you're all about social media,
Mm-hmm.
and we've really talked a lot about, you know, changing attitudes and behavior based on that. You know, let's talk about that for a couple of moments. How are you doing that?
So social media is a very, very powerful tool. I mean, particularly with younger generations, they engage in social media in ways that we never would have thought. You know, if you're on Facebook, you've probably all seen a post by one of your friends or family members on there, and afterwards you read it and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I cannot believe the intimate details of this person's life that they've just shared with me, you know, online. Sure. And you would never do that in a conversation with a sort of, they call it like ambient relationships. You know, we really don't have those strong relationships with those people, but we're sort of engaging with them. My kindergarten class has a reunion scheduled. Okay, seriously, my kindergarten class wants to have a reunion. But it's a powerful tool to engage people in. People feel like they can communicate with each other, even if those people aren't friends. They can sort of post information and post ideas and share it in sort of this non-combative atmosphere. And I think that's important. That's a good way for companies to find inefficiencies. You know, the military uses frontline intelligence to let the generals know what they should do next.
Sure.
And I think social media is that same way. We can find what the pulse of society is and the pulse of sustainability is by doing that.
Sure. If I have a business, you know, and I'm not green yet, but I want to go green, you know, how can you help me?
So how we help is we really have a turnkey system that a company, 5 employees in a company could sign up for our system, deploy this mechanism inside the company. It's all web-based. Every week, a message is sent out to the employees about just general sustainability issues. This week, it might be, let's try to reduce our water consumption. Next week, it could be, let's reduce disposable items in the office. And the conversation, we use the tag, start the conversation. So after we give them this little nugget of information, we say start the conversation, and we allow those people through this social media mechanism to communicate about it. But we also tie that into the energy waste and water and procurement costs in the company, so you know at the end of the day how much money it saved you,
Sure.
which is the most important thing. The reality of sustainability is if it's not profitable and it doesn't make money, it won't be sustained. So we've got to make sure that we always are tying that back to that return on investment.
Well, you know, the key is to do the right thing, and at the same time, you know, find a new alignment with it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the challenge for most of us. And again, it's a lot about attitude, isn't it?
Absolutely. Attitudes, you know, attitudes can morph over time, and it seems like when you create a community, you know, people are resistant to Twitter, they're resistant to Facebook. But my mother-in-law is now on Facebook, and she's hooked. You know, once you sort of get over that barrier, it's sort of easy then to engage in that medium, and you know, I think it's a good way for people to communicate. It's a very efficient way for communication as well.
Sure. You know, and I think that the owner of a company, whether it's a large company or a small one, you know, and I think once the owners buy into that, you know, the employees are willing to come into alignment with it.
Absolutely. Well, they're getting the paycheck.
Well,
so as long as the owner makes sure
it goes beyond that, though. I
agree.
I really believe. Otherwise, you know, hey, they can really sabotage that.
You're right. I think that some people have to be coerced with the financial incentive, but the reality is once they start to do it, they start to feel good about it.
Sure.
You know, they call it eco-guilt. I don't know if you've heard this term eco-guilt, but
no.
You know, you throw something that
I've got another one for you too, but go ahead.
You throw something in the garbage can that you know could have been recycled, and then about 10 minutes later, it's like this feeling comes over you, and you're like,
and you go retrieve it.
No, yeah, you're digging through the garbage, you know, and people come across you and give you $1 or put change in the cup that you're holding. It's sort of a mess. But.
That's great. Well, you know, we had lunch here a couple of days ago, and Derrick was talking about eco-evangelists. Mm-hmm. And I just was amazed that he could pull that right out of the air like that, and obviously now I know why.
You got it now.
But, you know, let's talk about your Army, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, so Army, as far as our team internally, we really have some really amazing people that work for us. We've got just great students from School of Sustainability that are over on our team that just do a phenomenal job, as well as just great people that are engaged in sustainability, want to see it move forward. We've got a number of very well-known environmental experts that we use, all sort of have the same you know, background as me of eco-capitalism. We know that to get a company to adopt, there's got to be able to move that line. So we're excited about that. We've really built a strong team of folks, and we're fortunate here in Arizona to have some of the best sustainability people in the world that are right in our back. backyards.
Sure. Another term that you've coined too is eco-action. What's that?
Yeah, so eco-actions really are just actions that people take on a daily basis that are beneficial to the environment. And we talk about eco-action, but even more importantly to us is the word that we use, pledge. Pledging to take an action is very, very important, because if I go, again, and turn the light off one time, it's only an action. But if I turn the light off every time for the rest of my life, it's a pledge. It's something I've committed to. And there's been studies that say when somebody pledges to do something, they're 95% more likely to do it than if they just nod their head in agreement. So that's very important.
Sure, it's a formal intention, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People feel committed to do it. There's something moral about that as well. When you give your word.
And for them to get on board with that, they've got to really be in alignment with it.
Absolutely.
So it's got to make sense to them, and what a great way to build unity with everybody in the company.
Absolutely. There was a recent Gallup study that says that companies that have an engagement mechanism that keeps their employees engaged in conversations grow their earnings per share 2.6 times their competitors.
Sure.
So it's not just about going green. It's not even just about saving money. It's about, in the long run, the value of the company increases when you have engaged people working in it. That same study says that only 29% of people that go to work are actively thinking about their job and engaged in their job. The rest of them are zombies sitting behind in their cubicle thinking about, what am I going to do when I get home from work? We got to change that.
Well, I know that, and again, that is so, so many of these issues are so relative to sustainability in and of itself, because, when we come down to the final analysis, sustainability really comes from our own heart.
Absolutely.
And so it's an inside job. It's as simple as that.
I think the Amish put it correctly hundreds of years ago, saying we don't inherit the land from our parents, we borrow it from our children. That's very, very important.
Awesome,
that's the perfect way to sum up sustainability. We're
totally.
borrowing it from future generations.
I totally agree with that. That's absolutely beautiful. So, whenever we've talked, you've been extremely exciting relative to the environment. And what is that enthusiasm all about?
I think it's just a passion. It's just an understanding internally that, I think the field of sustainability is the next .com in general.
Really?
I really do see that. I think we're on the verge of something, and I think Arizona in particular is in a real exciting position. We've got this valuable resource that rains down upon us, actually shines down upon us day in, 360 days a year, and we need to be able to utilize that. I really believe Arizona can potentially be the epicenter of the next sustainability movement, of this big sort of coming sustainability movement. That gets me excited. That's why I'm here, because of that.
Sure. Well, it certainly could be for solar. Things have got to change a little bit relative to policies and laws and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But, then that way we'll be drawing some of the big, heavy players throughout the world here.
Absolutely.
And to this timing, it hasn't happened yet, but hopefully one of these days, soon it will. So that brings us to green transparency. Let's talk about that.
So transparency is really important, particularly when it comes to green, because not all companies can be green companies. There are companies out there that do things that aren't green.
When you say a company is transparent, what do you mean by that?
So transparency really is allowing the stakeholders and shareholders to understand what you're doing as a company, sort of have that visibility into what you do. And on public companies, that's becoming very apparent, particularly on financials. But public companies also are starting, we have Enron and all this.
Yeah.
Right. But
jail, rather.
Right. So it's also about sharing the impact of that company on the environment, because I think investors today are much more savvy than they were even 5 years ago.
Sure.
So it's important for the investors to be able to visibly see into that company and understand what their impact is.
Derrick, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dan.
We'll have you back soon.
Thanks.
To call Derrick, 480-389-4246.